My friends, the neighbor has stopped just taking hits. Pay close attention to this because it changes a lot of what we've been talking about here for several days. During this whole round, there was only one pattern, just one. Iran attacked the Americans, couldn't physically reach the United States, and took it out on the neighbors here: Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Jordan. The neighbor would get hit and pay the price. So today the news came out that the tables are turning. The Wall Street Journal revealed that Bahrain and Kuwait hit targets inside Iran right at the beginning of this campaign, in secret, without anyone knowing until now, until the newspaper broke the story. This is the first time these countries have retaliated militarily in a direct way against Tehran. We remember that during the 40-day war, the United Arab Emirates reportedly took part, and now Bahrain and Kuwait as well, and they weren't alone in these incursions. The United Arab Emirates provided cover, target information, and air protection. In other words, the neighbor who once just took the hits is now fighting back, and it's not just one neighbor, it's an entire block, and it didn't stop there. It just came out right now at this very moment while I was preparing this live stream. That's why it took me a little while to start. Saudi Arabia retaliated against the Houthi attacks and is now, at this very moment, attacking Sana'a in the Hodeidah area, also there in Yemen, after a gas ship was hit today in the Red Sea by the Houthis. The Saudis responded, they're actually responding, attacking the port of Hodeidah in Yemen, the heart of the Houthi territory there in Yemen. This is happening right now, folks, in real time while we're talking here. Keep Hodeidah in mind too, because this port is extremely important since this is a whole new front opening up, and I'll come back to it later in this video. But for now, just look at the picture. Bahrain, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates retaliating against Iran. Saudi Arabia retaliating against the Houthis, who are also part of Iran. All the neighbors came off the bench at the same time. While this chessboard was shifting, 3 more heavy pieces fell on the same day. Iran rejected the ceasefire proposal I told you about yesterday, in yesterday's video. For those who still remember yesterday's video, right, Iran rejected that ceasefire proposal. Trump summoned Netanyahu to Washington for Monday. He called the prime minister over there, guys, to talk face to face. It's the 13th night of American strikes, pushing deeper than ever into Iran overnight. Look at the number of targets marked here on this map so you can follow in real time the locations that have already been hit in Iran. And in the middle of all this, the regime has sharply escalated its rhetoric, including a direct threat against Israel. And in the end, I'm going to stop everything here to give you my deeper analysis, the thing you always ask for. What do you think about all this? I'll bring that here at the end of the video. And this still isn't over, guys. It doesn't close, okay? This news is important. Pay attention. Pay attention and stay with me until the end. Live from Israel where everything is happening. As I speak, I'm reading the latest news about Saudi Arabia's attacks in Yemen. As things happen, I'll keep bringing them to you. Take a look. Breaking news as well. B-2 and B-52 bombers in the United States have been placed on maximum alert, and more aerial refueling aircraft have been moved closer to the Middle East to support military forces in the region. Okay? This news just came out as well. But before I open this up here, everyone, piece by piece, the usual framework I always use so we can understand what's happening. Yesterday, I told you that we were in the middle of a countdown, embassies emptying, shelters opening up, oil prices breaking past 100. Oil has already dropped a little. It was around 97, 98 at that exact moment. I think it's at 98 now, okay? So oil dropped a bit, but today the countdown didn't stop. It took on a new look here. America's Arab allies left the reserve bench and entered the field, now officially it seems. And note this idea too, because it runs through the entire video today. This stopped being a fight between Iran and the United States and turned into Iran against the whole neighborhood. And let's start right here with Bahrain and Kuwait, okay? According to the Wall Street Journal, which spoke to people who know about the operations, fighter jets from these two countries took off at the beginning of the month, okay? At the beginning of the month, that is, at the start of this new American operation, and they hit missile depots, drone depots, and other military facilities inside Iran. Those of you who've been following might remember the mysterious explosions that happened in Iran right at the beginning of the month. Does anyone remember that? The mysterious explosions, they said, were gas explosions, right? A gas cylinder exploded, a gas pipeline exploded. So apparently it wasn't gas, right? It was actually Bahrain and Kuwait behind all that. And the United Arab Emirates also provided the part nobody sees, but that is decisive in this story. Intelligence data about where the targets were and defensive air cover during this mission, okay? They provided intelligence so they could keep doing what they were doing. None of these three countries confirmed this officially, and you know how to filter this information, right, folks? As long as there's no official stamp, I treat this as a press report. I don't state it as a confirmed fact, but we know, right, folks? Pay attention to what this report represents if it's correct. I'm almost certain it is. Until now, the Gulf countries were victims in this story. Iran took out on them the anger it couldn't take out on the Americans, and these countries swallowed all of this in silence out of fear of escalation, folks. If Bahrain and Kuwait actually attacked Iran, that means the fear has shifted sides. They figured that just standing by and taking the hits was more costly than fighting back, and now they're fighting back. I believe this is probably still going on, folks, even now. And here's the detail that changes the game board forever. They did this in coordination, Bahrain, Kuwait, and the Emirates, all three together on the same mission. The only country that isn't part of the Abraham Accords here is Kuwait. Okay, folks? Bahrain and the Emirates are part of the Abraham Accords. Could Kuwait be the next country to join the Abraham Accords with these three now working together? Interesting, right, folks? Let's go. This is the embryo of something the Middle East has never really had. A collective Arab defense against Iran. This has never existed in this way, folks. A Sunni defense against Iran. And look at the irony, because it's huge, folks. The old dream of the Iranian regime has always been to expel the Americans and rule this entire region alone. What it actually achieved was pushing its neighbors into a military bloc against itself. Iran wanted to be alone in command. And it's managing to be alone, but it's getting surrounded. It and all the cronies together there in that place, all trapped inside Iran. And now you understand why this connects with the second news of the day, the rejected ceasefire. Yesterday, I told you here that the Prime Minister of Iraq had taken a proposal to Iran. Do you remember that? He brought a proposal, a truce proposal coming from Washington, and they were received there with kisses. Remember that story about the kiss? So, today Iran responded saying that the proposal was rejected. The information comes from the New York Times, the newspaper that Trump hates, right? But the New York Times reports stories that other newspapers don't end up reporting, folks. They reported that this proposal was rejected. And the reason the Iranians gave, because that's the key to understanding all of this, they said they have no interest in a temporary agreement that leaves open the issue of control over the Strait of Hormuz. In other words, they won't give it up, folks. They won't give it up. That means the regime will only sit at the table if the conversation is about the Americans leaving the region and nothing less than that. This, my friends, is asking for the impossible. That's not going to happen. Imagine the Americans pulling all their forces out of the region, not just the ones that arrived recently, but actually removing the bases they have in the Middle East. There are so many bases, folks. Someone asking for the impossible isn't seeking agreement, they're stalling. That's what the Iranian regime is doing, as I said yesterday. The regime isn't considering domestic damage. For them, all these explosions that we follow here every day on the channel, right? Whenever I have footage, I bring something new. None of this makes any difference to them, folks. The regime is counting the days until the American election. It wants to drag this out until Trump's voters get tired. That's the goal of the war. That's exactly the goal. And there was also a twist in this story that I need to tell you about here, because it's a lesson on how information works. In this conflict, just a few hours after the news came out, the Iraqi government itself denied everything. Folks, everything. Just to emphasize here, Saudi Arabia hasn't joined the Abraham Accords, folks. They haven't joined as of the time this video is being recorded, 11:48 p.m. on July 24th, okay? Saudi Arabia hasn't joined the Abraham Accords yet. A few hours later, folks, after the news about the Prime Minister who took a ceasefire proposal to Iran, just a few hours later, the Iraqi government itself also denied everything. The Iraqi Prime Minister's office released a statement saying that he never took any proposal, that the report is completely unfounded, and that Iraq is not mediating anything between the United States and Iran. And now why is that, folks? Who's telling the truth here, you must be wondering? On one side, the newspaper quoting Iranian and Iraqi officials, and on the other, the Iraqi government denying it in front of the cameras. My opinion is this is my opinion. I believe the visit happened because there are images of this visit, I saw the images of that sequence of kisses and hugs between the Prime Minister and the Iranians. So that's not fake. That really happened, okay? The Prime Minister of Iraq, he went to Tehran. He was received and hugged by the Iranians. This can't be denied. It's recorded. So for me, the conversation happened and Iraq is denying it for a simple reason, guys. Survival, okay? Survival. Because Iraq lives on a tightrope. It has American troops on its territory, and it also has the armed wing, Hezbollah, the giant inside Iraq as well, guys. If he publicly admits that he's carrying the Americans' message to Tehran, he becomes a target for both sides. So he denies it, even if this is true. Let's come back here quickly to talk about the targets that were hit, okay? An explosion was also heard just now at this moment in the Strait of Hormuz. Let me show you the planes before we continue. Pay attention, I wanted to quickly explain this for those who didn't understand. All these planes here are refueling planes because a lot of people just joined the channel and didn't get it. These are refueling planes. There's a filter that I turn on here, look. There's a filter I can enable. I'll turn on my camera and explain since some people didn't get it and you might want to understand too. The name of this site is flightradar24.com, okay? I'll also pin in the comments which site this is. Pay attention here, guys. There's a filter here that I use. Do you see the filter here? United States. So I created a filter, okay? What does this filter do? It only shows the US Air Force planes, that's all. So if I disable this filter, we'll see all the planes that are currently in the Gulf. Look at how many planes there are. This is what's happening right now. It's the air traffic in this region at this very moment in real time. These are the planes that are flying here. With the filter on, we only see those from the United States, which is what matters now. So that means that while there are war preparations, missiles going everywhere, there are people who decided to fly here, guys. Just look at the number of planes. I wouldn't get on a flight to this region, not for all the money in the world. I wouldn't make this trip here at this exact moment. Yemen, Saudi Arabia attacking Yemen here, Iran attacking these countries here in the region, Kuwait and Bahrain, which is right here. Bahrain is really small, okay? Look at Bahrain right next to Qatar. In other words, missiles flying, drones flying. They're attacking here in Erbil, also in Iraq. I wouldn't make any kind of connection, honestly, guys. I wouldn't do anything here in this region. Not right now, okay? Wait for this to pass and don't try your luck thinking a drone won't come near you. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. Look, in other words, it's the country, going back to the topic of Iraq, because that denial reflects the whole country, guys. It's the whole country trying not to be crushed between the United States and Iran. That's the truth. Notice that, denial or not, the result is just as I said yesterday. No truce and the table remains empty. And now I want to show you something that proves from Iran's own mouth that this dance of denying in public and talking in secret is their game. A censored excerpt has just come out from a speech by the Iranian president, President Pezeshkian, on state television, and it's explosive, guys. A part they cut out, but it leaked anyway, right? It was broadcast live. He said something he shouldn't have. Then the television cut that part out. And in the replay, it wasn't there anymore. But the opposition caught it right away. Guys, look at what he said. Just look at what he said. He said that in the past, previous leaders would say in public that no, they wouldn't negotiate. He was referring here to Khamenei. But in meetings, closed meetings, after hearing the real situation of the country, they would send negotiators to talk to the Americans. And he went on to say the following: the current negotiations are also happening with the permission and knowledge of the current leadership, that is, of Mustafa Khamenei. He said this on an international network. They took it down later, but he said it and it was already caught, right, guys? This video exists, okay? He said exactly that. In other words, the guy who condemns, right, the great Satan and the little Satan, which is Israel. The great Satan is the United States, but at the same time, he negotiates. Just for those who are just joining us now, guys, large-scale attacks in Iran haven't started yet. At this exact moment, not yet. Explosions were heard there in the Strait of Hormuz. The Saudi offensives tonight in Yemen, according to reports, were directed at the port of Hudaida and a communication facility in the city of Hudaida. Also, another communication facility on Kamaran Island, all under Houthi control. Pay attention to what Saudi Arabia is doing there, folks. Saudi Arabia is also targeting communication towers in Yemen. This is a preparation for a major war in that region. Destroying communication towers and radars, that's what's happening now. Saudi Arabia is doing its part and working there against the Houthis. That's what's happening now, okay? So, at the time of recording this video, this live stream we're doing here, okay? 11:54 p.m. The video is not pre-recorded, guys. It's not pre-recorded. It's live, all right? Dear Davi Maligno Isem Remedio, let's keep going here, guys. Pay attention. You understand how big this is, right, guys? The president, just to circle back to Pezeshkian, the president of Iran, admitting that their public no, when they say no, is just an act. Do you understand that, Mortadella? That when they say something and it's not true, Pezeshkian himself said that while they're shouting to the whole world that they won't sit at the table with the Americans, they actually sit at the table in secret with the approval of the top of the regime, the Revolutionary Guard, with the approval of the supreme leader. And why do they censor this part? Because the regime can't let its own people see that it's negotiating with those it calls the enemy every day. In other words, the mask is off. It's the internal siege again. They have to lie to both outsiders and insiders at once. And on the other side of the table, Trump confirmed the same game, but according to Trump's version, guys, according to Trump's version, look, pay close attention. He said the following: they want to make a deal. Sometimes they say they don't. They want to look tough, but in reality, they want to close the deal. And there are also only two options. Either we dismantle them completely or we negotiate with them. And that's what we're doing right now. At this very moment, while we're talking, we're also talking with them. In other words, exato momento, enquanto conversamos, both sides confirm the same thing, each in their own way. There are talks happening behind the scenes right now, in the middle of the conflict. And Trump even made a remark mocking them when asked when Iran would finally give in and sit down for real. He replied, maybe they'll give in, or maybe they'll just hide in a cave. They have very deep caves where they can hide. That jab about the caves isn't random, guys. It's a direct message about Iran's underground nuclear facilities. Those ones in the mountains, you know, the ones we already know about that are dug way too deep, right, guys? We've discussed this here many times. Trump is ironically saying they can hide anywhere. He knows where they are. Trump just said this to the press in the Oval Office. It just happened about 20 minutes ago. While the big players are nudging each other at the table, Iran's Yemeni arm just got hit, folks. And here I go back again to the name I mentioned at the beginning, Odeida, the port, the city of Odeida. Let me lay out the sequence of the day for you because it's a step-by-step escalation. First step, earlier today, the Houthis hit a Saudi Arabian gas ship that was passing down here. Look down here, folks, here in the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. That's how you pronounce it, okay? For those who want to learn Bab el-Mandeb, Abel Mandeb. In this region here, that's straight at the exit of the Red Sea. Second step, Saudi Arabia responded by hitting the port of Odeida, which is also here in this region. Right here, look. Port of Odeida, see it here? Here, okay? They always target this region, look. All right, from Odeida, the heart of the Houthi territory. According to Arab sources, the targets were the fuel depots at the port, and there was also fire on the island in the same province. On one of these islands here, look. This region here, right here in the middle. In other words, missiles are flying over there, folks. Third level, an important Houthi commander responded. Look at what he said. He wrote, port against port, airport against airport, and escalation against even greater escalation. And here, let's take this with a grain of salt, right? Because a big part of this comes from the media itself, from the Houthis, who reacted by saying that the Saudis have opened the gates of hell for themselves. There's still no confirmation, but that's what they said, right? In the Houthis Telegram channels, they said exactly that the fire is going to reach Saudi Arabia's side. Just to remind you, once again, they declared the airspace closed, right? They said that no one can fly over Saudi Arabia while Yemen is under this blockade by Saudi Arabia. That means all these flights here, folks, are in danger, okay? That's the truth. They could shoot down a plane. They've threatened this, of course, probably not just once, but several times. But the sequence is very clear, folks. It fits into the whole picture of the day. The Saudis, who had only been taking hits from the Houthis at sea, fought back. Their ship was hit in the morning and a port in Yemen was hit in the afternoon. Look at the number of planes that have taken off from Israel since we started this live stream, okay? When we started, there weren't all these planes taking off toward the Gulf, all right? These planes here are already in this Gulf region, see? They're making that same movement here. And this one's just starting, see? That circling pattern is starting here, right? It's orbiting in the region and other planes are arriving. That means that around 1:30 in the morning, the Americans will start their attacks here in this region once again, as always, folks. Around 1:30 in the morning is when it usually starts. Here is the plane. Let me show its image, marked right at this moment. Look at the American plane here. Boeing KC-135, these are refueling planes. Many here in the region. It's another neighbor, folks, that came off the bench and joined the game, which is Saudi Arabia. The same move that Bahrain and Kuwait made against Iran is now being repeated by Saudi Arabia against Iran's Yemeni arm. The siege is tightening from more sides. And now everyone is waiting for the next move from the Houthis because the equation they published promises to pay back in kind. Now let's move on to the third piece. Netanyahu was summoned to the United States. The Israeli Prime Minister's office confirmed the invitation from President Trump. Netanyahu is traveling to the United States on Monday. He arrives on Monday, and on Tuesday, he meets with Trump at the White House and also attends the funeral of Senator Lindsey Graham, who was one of Israel's greatest friends in the US Congress. Graham passed away just over a week ago, and his funeral in the United States is scheduled for this Tuesday. And now, why does this matter so much in the middle of all this, folks? I'll just remind you that back during the June 2025 war, there was a story like this, okay? There was a story like this where Netanyahu had to appear in the United States. He had planned a trip to the United States, but days before it, the war began. It served as a smokescreen for the Iranians to believe Israel wouldn't attack since Netanyahu was still set to visit the United States. Is that happening again? Good question, right? The timing isn't random. He's the president who just said he's close to making a decision. The largest operation so far wouldn't call its main military ally for a face-to-face meeting without reason. This is also important to consider. When the two men leading this front arrange to be in the same room face-to-face, it's because a big decision is being worked out. And there's another detail that reinforces this as well. On the same day today, the American embassy in Jerusalem issued a warning for Americans in Israel to prepare for flight cancellations due to the rising tension. Do you remember that the United States had done something worldwide about this? And now today, the American embassy published exactly that. So put those two things together, the leader of Israel flying to Washington and the American embassy warning that the airspace here could close at any moment. Guys, this is not a coincidence. While this political machine was turning, the fire didn't stop for a second. And here I need to situate you in time because today's video is about the attack that happened at dawn, okay? I'm not talking about the attack that's happening right now. Let's talk about what happened in the early hours from yesterday to today. It was in the early hours from yesterday to today. The Americans started around 7 in the evening US time and finished around 2 in the morning, okay? That's in American time. Here in Israel, that was around 2:30 and ended at 4 in the morning. And US Central Command confirmed it was the 13th consecutive night of fire inside Iran. 13th consecutive night, 13 straight nights with attacks continuing into the early morning, and this time it went even deeper, much deeper inside Iran. Let me put up the maps here, the target map, so we can follow in real time where was hit. Let me put this up so you can watch the whole thing. Look there. Let's zoom in a bit, put it like this. This way it's better. Okay? It went deeper this time, guys. According to the official American statement, the targets were command centers, drone depots, communication networks, coastal surveillance posts, and also naval capabilities, all to reduce the threat from Iran. All of this was done to reduce the threat Iran poses to navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. And the reports that came from the ground, from the Iranian side, give details about the damage. The city of Havaz, let me put the city of Havaz here. I'll put it close so we can see it here. Look, the city of Havaz is up here. Here, look, this city right here. All right? The city of Havaz in the southwest was the hardest hit. Reports mention victims, people who lost their lives there, and several injured with weapons depots being hit. A missile complex in the Yazid region. Look at this, folks. The Havaz and Bushehr regions are the ones closest to Karg Island. If the Americans try to take control of this island here, they need to reduce the military capability that exists in this region. Here there are elite unit bases that are prepared for any kind of ground invasion to stop them. And it's the strongest and closest city on this side of the Iraq border. Remember that they threatened to invade Kuwait too if a ground war started. So Kuwait is right here, look. So there, the Americans are weakening this region. They also destroyed a border crossing here between Iran and Kuwait. See, there's a border crossing right here, look. That red dot was also hit yesterday. A border crossing here in this region. So this is happening, guys, in real time. All right, pay attention. And also a city located south of Bandar Abbas and Bandar Abbas itself as well, where the attacks there in Bandar Abbas also caused power outages. And in the capital itself, Tehran, the air defense systems were once again activated against targets in the sky. There was no direct attack there in Tehran, but the air defense worked again. The southwest, center, south, and capital all in one night. And according to Iranian witnesses, the Americans used those B-1 planes again there, those gigantic strategic ones that took off from Europe. The kind of aircraft that crosses continents loaded with weapons and only comes into play when they mean business. Initial reports now indicate that explosions were heard in the Sharm Raud region in northeastern Iran. Right now, more explosions are happening. I'm not sure if it was the Americans or the Arabs. If the United States had started the operations, they would have announced it. Remember that now the Central Command, they announced, we are now starting operations in Iran. They announce it. They haven't announced it yet, but explosions, this is the second report of explosions. That means it's Arab countries acting in that region. And Iran's response came in the same way, okay? This morning, the regime fired at 3 targets at the same time. Jordan again, Bahrain, and the Erbil region, which is up here. Erbil is up here in this part, right here in this region of Iraq. Erbil is right at the top of Iraq. The Jordanian army reported that it intercepted 7 missiles and 6 suicide drones. Here, these are the reports from Jordan about the interceptions and the launches. And later, the first reports came in of attacks against Saudi Arabia as well, with suicide drones targeting US Army logistics depots in the Saudi desert. Let's take a look at the reports from Saudi Arabia here. See this blue dot here? These are the reports at this air base, reports about the depots that belong to the Americans, okay? These are just reports. Saudi Arabia hasn't confirmed anything. They never really confirm anything. So, even when surrounded and taking hits for 13 nights in a row, that's what you need to understand. The regime still fires in several directions, still fires at the same time. He's down, that's a fact, but he's not disarmed at all. This is important for you to understand too, so you don't underestimate what's coming ahead. But just what you've seen so far is already worth your like, so do your part and hit the like button now. And if you're not subscribed yet, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell because this story is changing minute by minute from now on. The notification bell alerts you when a new piece appears on the map. And now let's talk about money, because Trump is reversing or has just invented a new move, and it's the kind that hits the regime in the wallet. Guys, which one do you want me to leave up? Which map? This one or the one with planes? Let's look at the planes. The map with planes is more interesting since many are appearing in this area. Review what Trump did, guys. Yesterday, he made the hit ship equations and an Iranian power plant failed. He created it, but he didn't follow through because there was a ship hit, but no power plant went down. And today he came up with a third one, and this one is financial. This is cool. I hope he follows through and doesn't just leave it in online posts. In publicações, internet posts. He published the following. From now on, and until further notice, every ship owner and every bit of damage involving ships, cargo, or anything related to navigation will be paid for with Iranian money that the United States has in its hands and controls. These damages can be quite large, but even so, it's the right thing to do. Do you understand Trump's move here? Look, guys, now the Iranians are firing towards Bahrain right at this moment as we're speaking here, 12:07. Let's keep going here. While this is happening, we're bringing you real-time information, all right? Let's go. Take a look. There is Iranian money frozen in Iran, in the United States, sitting there under American control. And Trump just said that for every ship the Houthis or Iran hit, he'll pay for the repairs of those ships by taking it from the Iranian treasury. It's the regime's own money paying for the damage the regime is causing. And look at how we know this really hit Iran hard, folks. How do we find that out? By the reaction. Iranian Foreign Minister Aragati responded quickly, just 10 minutes after Trump's post. This time, he didn't respond with military bravado, saying he would destroy, do this or that. He responded with real concern. He said that confiscating a country's assets to pay for future claims creates a dangerous and explosive precedent. He also warned that when the government turns asset confiscation into routine, no one's assets are safe. Then chaos follows. It won't be pretty or quiet. Notice the difference, folks. When it comes to missiles, the regime talks about revenge at the gates of hell, right? In World War III, when it comes to their money, the tone changes immediately to legal, to cautious, almost a plea. That's because Trump found the sensitive spot. He hit the regime in the pocket. They deny it with their words, right? With tough talk. Whenever anything happens, they say they're going to destroy and attack. But the nervousness in this statement shows that this really hurt them. And now let's talk about an international piece that almost no one connected, but it's also very big. Trump said flat out that Russia and China are out of this. Remember the suspicions that they were helping Iran? Another important piece of information, the Lufthansa Group continues to reduce its operations in Israel. Austrian Airlines and ITA, both Italian, canceled their flights to Israel scheduled for tomorrow morning. Oops! It's a sign that maybe tonight will be long, okay? It's a sign that something might be coming, folks. ITA and Austrian Airlines just canceled their flights for tomorrow, okay? The ones scheduled for tomorrow have been canceled. Look, talking about China, folks, about Trump, he posted that the Chinese President Xi Jinping told him at that recent meeting in Beijing that under no circumstances will China give or sell weapons to Iran. And that this also applies to Chinese companies as well. And that President Putin, despite the war in Ukraine, also said that he will not sell weapons to Iran under any circumstances, according to Trump himself. In other words, the two big sponsors who always come up when talking about Iran, according to Trump, are out of this. I don't believe it, okay? I don't believe it. And now here, let me put my skeptical filter on here with you, because this is Trump's word, folks. It's not a statement from Russia or China. It's him. It's what he thinks, okay? But let's think about the effect of this, because if it's true, Iran is more alone than ever. If that's true. Without weapons resupply from the major powers, they fight with what they have in stock. And what's in stock decreases with every night of fire. Remember that too. If it's true, if it really has substance, that's great. It's great if that's true, right? Let's see if there's more going on in Iran, because things are happening, folks. Explosions are also being heard now in Bahrain, right at this moment. So there was a launch toward Bahrain, and now explosions in that region as well, folks. This still isn't an American offensive yet, okay? It's huge. The Iranians are hitting targets in the Gulf. So remember when I showed you a few days ago that Russia was splitting from within? Do you remember that? From Russia splitting due to lack of fuel, Ukrainians burning the logistics centers over there. Guys, each image is more apocalyptic than the last. Do you know what they're doing? They're firing at centers of, I don't know the name, I don't remember the name. It's like Amazon, okay? Amazon, those gigantic logistics centers that exist in Russia. They have a number there. I'm not sure if it's 11 or 8 centers of this type. They are destroying these centers, and the stock that's inside, which belongs to people like you and me who sell maybe through Amazon, is being destroyed. And days before this Ukrainian offensive in Russia started, that same place changed its contract, saying it isn't responsible for anything that happens in those warehouses. Look at that. I believe 4 or 5 of those huge warehouses have already been destroyed. The fire is unbelievable. Absurd. And now there was, just quickly changing the subject here so you can understand what's happening there too, guys. And the guy from Russia asked, he's actually saying that these big companies need to protect themselves from Ukrainian drones. In other words, these companies need to buy air defense systems. That's basically what he's saying, right, guys? But let's move on. Just to remind you here that Russia is also splitting apart internally because of this, guys. Because of this, okay? Because of the economic situation of the people over there. In other words, a godfather whose house is cracking and burning inside won't have the strength, guys, to help his godson on the other side of the world, Iran. He just won't. Iran isn't just under military siege, it's under diplomatic siege too. The doors are closing one by one. Then Orest wrote Will Beres. Is that it? Will Beres is the name of the company. Every fire is bigger than the last. Look at this. The signs are that the American machine is still gearing up because they haven't even stopped to catch their breath, guys. 2 electronic warfare planes left England heading to Crete in Greece, and probably from Crete they'll go on to the Middle East. These are the planes that exist to jam the enemy's communication and radar systems. It's part of preparing the ground, folks. That's the truth. 10 more aerial refueling planes arrived in the Middle East from the United States. There are a lot more aerial refueling planes in this region now than there were before. Just to be clear, let me make this very clear. During the 40-day war, there weren't as many as there are now. There are a lot more now. And this is where I need to stop and explain to you, because some people don't know, folks, that the refueling plane, the one you're seeing up here right now, shows the truth, how big what's coming really is. A refueling plane like that is basically a flying gas station. It's there to fill up the fighter jets because fighters don't have a very long range. It can't fly for very long, so it needs aerial refueling during the flight, okay? In other words, so it can reach farther and stay over the target longer, without having to keep going back to base. That's the truth. Nobody builds up dozens of these planes just to strike at the edge of the border, just to stay around here, you know? Nobody does all this just to keep striking here, guys. No. That's not what it's for. You build up tanker planes like that when the plan is to take the fight deep into Iran, to the Tehran region, and also to the other side here as well. In the heart of Iran, and keep that fire going for a long time. The number of tanker planes is a gauge of how ambitious the operation is, and that thermometer keeps rising. And there was another sign too, this one from the American propaganda camp. One of the biggest conservative newspapers in the United States published a cover calling for Trump to launch a large-scale operation against Iran. The headline was something like this: "Go all in and come back home." And Iran in the background, a photo of Iran and explosions. And the argument was that this would be the only way to end the confrontation. Go all in, go there, and come back home. But notice what this means. It's not just the government talking, it's the allied press preparing the public. That's what's happening. Creating the atmosphere so that when the big operation happens, the average American is already convinced that it was necessary, because it was necessary. I've been showing you how public opinion is shaped daily, right in front of everyone. And now let's talk about the regime's threats, because their tone in the last few hours has also crossed all boundaries. And the first of these threats targets a specific city, Tel Aviv. The Iranian commander made a direct threat connecting Iran's capital to Israel's largest city. The message was as follows: if America attacks Tehran and Iran's energy infrastructure, Tel Aviv will be hit directly. The regime is trying here to make Israel a hostage to American behavior. It's saying, if you Americans hit my capital, the most populous city in Israel will pay the price. It's the old playbook, right, folks? Iran tries to drag Israel into the equation, to turn a confrontation with the United States into a confrontation against Israel, which benefits them much more in terms of propaganda in the Arab world, right? For the Shiite supporters, the Arab Shiites over in Iraq, for example. And there was also a second threat from Iran. Another Iranian commander laid out a new formula. He said that for every Iranian citizen who dies, an American soldier will be sent to hell. And he added saying, I'm telling you, they've already prepared one-way tickets straight to hell for the Americans. This, my friends, is bravado. It's a psychological game to scare people, to scare the soldier's family. Not the soldier, it's going to scare the family of the soldier who's in this war. That's the truth. That's the only truth, folks. Now pay attention. True or not, this raises the world's alert level. And there was a third thing too. This was more concrete and more dangerous. The Revolutionary Guard made a public appeal asking the population of the countries in the region to report, in other words, to tell them where the Americans are staying, folks. Where the Americans are staying. And they told the residents of these countries to stay at least 500 meters away from any place where there are American soldiers, because the hotels and the places where they are will become targets. And here I should remind you that this has happened. They hit hotels and buildings where there were American soldiers. Remember this from the 40-day war? That happened then too. Thank you, Barini. A reminder about water is important. How long has the live stream been going? 37 minutes. This is very serious, guys. Very serious, because it turns ordinary citizens into informants and makes any building with American soldiers inside a target. The confrontation is being pushed into the cities. And now diplomacy keeps collapsing and the signs of evacuation multiplied today. Germany also gave the order, told its citizens to leave Iran immediately, and reduced embassy services there in Tehran. The United States extended the travel alert to the entire Middle East, urging maximum caution and warning again about cancelled flights and closed airspace at any moment. Here's a detail that reveals how the world sees this moment. Trump publicly thanked the Prime Minister of Bulgaria for allowing the Americans to use Bulgarian bases, even under the Iranian threat. And why is this important? Because from there, my friends, from there the attacks will come, probably the attacks on Tehran, from there. I'll show you here, just let me center the map properly to show you the location. And there are even planes moving there right now. Look here, Bulgaria. Bulgaria is here. Look at the movement up there over Bulgaria, or using Bulgaria's airspace, or leaving Bulgaria. In other words, from here the plane can come through the Black Sea and attack Tehran, okay? So they can use this airspace, just like they use the island of Crete, Cyprus, and Diego Garcia Island, which is right here in the middle. Here, look. Diego Garcia is right here. This island is so small, guys. There's also a base here. The Diego Garcia base. From here, maybe B-1 and B-52 bombers take off and head toward, look at the distance too. It's really far, guys, toward Iran. From this point all the way to Iran. Notice how many planes are now in this airspace. Some have already switched off their transponders. In other words, soon another round should start. But notice the movement there, guys. On one side, Iran is trying to scare everyone. That's what's happening. That helps the Americans. Still, these countries, Bulgaria, England, the Gulf states, are supporting the US regardless. The coalition keeps tightening. It's close to being finalized, guys. I'm almost finished and won't keep you for an hour. I want to leave you with one final note, a symbolic victory for Israel in the international arena. Remember the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court in The Hague? The one who had issued the arrest warrants against Netanyahu and the former defense minister Gallant was removed from office. Out of the 125 member countries of the court, 82 voted for his removal. He was removed because of a sexual harassment accusation, accusations that came to light shortly before he issued those warrants against Benjamin Netanyahu and against Gallant. For Israel, it's a twist. And yet, the man who tried to criminalize the country's leadership left through the back door. And now, my friends, I promised I'd tell you what I think about all this now. And you can disagree too, there's no problem with that. Everyone today is looking at the siege closing in from outside Iran, the neighbors retaliating, Europe allowing its bases to be used, Russia and China distancing themselves, and the regime's money is turning into a weapon against it. A siege from all sides, from the outside. And here I want you to look at something that almost no one connects with the rest. There's also a siege happening at the same time, and this one is from the inside. Because while the world is squeezing the regime from the outside, the regime is squeezing its own people from the inside. Pay attention to what's happening far from the headlines on this same day. While the missiles are flying, the regime kept taking the lives of its own citizens. Young protesters, political prisoners, people whose only fault was wanting to live in a different kind of country. And it's not a small number. Trump himself talks about more than 52,000 protesters who were eliminated by the regime during that month, during the demonstrations. The Iranian opposition says it's much more, folks, more than 80,000. And this number hasn't stopped growing, not even for a single day, not even in the middle of the confrontation. Every day, more names are added to this list. And now, put the two ends together, because this is where things become much clearer. A regime that needs to silence its own people by force to stay in power is a regime that has already lost the most important battle, the one inside its own home. He may have missiles, he may have centrifuges, he may have mountains hiding everything, he may threaten Tel Aviv, the whole Gulf, but he rules over a people who no longer want the regime. And that's why he's so afraid of any truce. Pay attention, he's afraid of a truce, folks. So think with me, if the bombs stop falling today, the average Iranian will lift his head and look inward. And that's when he asks the question, right, folks? And he won't ask about the Americans, he'll ask about his own life and about who has controlled him his whole life. The regime doesn't just fear a military siege from the outside, it fears the day when its own people stop being distracted by the enemy out there and turn their eyes inward. That's why I believe this regime won't want peace anytime soon. It wants confrontation. The external fire is what keeps the siege going inside. As long as there's an external enemy, the people don't hold the internal enemy accountable. And that's the strategy, and actually that's the Iranian tragedy that the headlines will never tell you about. The ones who pay the most for this regime aren't us here, folks. It's not the Americans either. It's not the Gulf neighbors. It's the Iranian people themselves, surrounded on both sides. Here's the image that captures everything from today. Two sieges at once with people caught in between. I'll wrap up now. Today's board differs from yesterday's. Yesterday it was Iran against the Americans with the neighbors caught in the middle, and today the neighbors fought back. The ceasefire was rejected and the leader of Israel was called to the United States. It stopped being a full-on showdown. It turned into Iran against the whole siege. The United States, the Gulf countries, Europe, the bases, right, in Bulgaria, and its own money being used against it. The regime wanted to be alone in control of the region, and it managed to be alone. But now it's surrounded on all sides, and the clock keeps ticking. On Monday, Netanyahu, with Trump and the president himself, said that the decision is a matter of days. We are at that point in history where each new dawn could bring a different world for all of us. But before I go, here's our Hebrew word of the day, folks. Today's expression is quituro. All right, quituro. For those who were waiting for the word, let me put it here, folks. It's important, right? Let me see if I can quickly show it to you here. Quituro. Let's put it here. So 1 second, folks. Quituro. Done. This here is our little word, or you can't see it. Can you see it there? Lift this up. Look. Quituro. That's the word, guys. I'll put it here. Quituro. What does that mean? It means siege, siege, siege. The act of surrounding, of closing in from all sides. We use this a lot here when there's an attack. And today there was an attack in Israel, right? With 2 victims. Today in Israel there was an attack. So there was a siege around that Arab city. That's exactly what's happening today with Iran as well. Except there are 2 sieges actually. The one from the outside, where the world has closed in on the regime. And the one from the inside, where the regime closes in on its own people. That's the word that sums up this phase, this new phase, and this story, has just begun, folks. I'm live from Israel in the Judean mountains, closely monitoring every movement, flight, and decision in the coming hours. When the next piece falls, I'll return to explain it live. Let's see what's happening in Iran now because the events are unfolding. Let me check. It's the second. The alert level has been raised throughout Saudi Arabia in anticipation of a possible response from Yemen. Explosions reported in Strait of Hormuz. It will probably start there again around 1 o'clock in the morning. That's always the time when the attacks begin here in the region. 1 o'clock in the morning. It's Ketur, exactly, Ketur. If you want me to add Hebrew as well, that's no problem at all, guys. We can do that too. Let's add Hebrew here as well for those who want to learn exactly how it's written. Just a second, I'll put it here. I'll read the comments soon, guys. One moment. Just a second. I'm going to put Ketur here. Hold on. Let me switch the keyboard here. Ketur. Done. That's how you write it in Hebrew and in transliteration. Thank you, Joseval, for the super sticker. Thank you, Gil, for the super sticker. Thanks, Karen. Thank you, Cristiano. Eduardo, thank you for the super sticker too. Good morning, Davi. Shalom, Eduardo. Thanks, my friend. Eduardo, Marcos, Adriana, Danilo, Serafim, Lucas. Let's help Davi. Thanks, Lucas, for the help. Agnaldo, good evening. Edelson, thanks. Marcos, thank you for the super sticker too. Peace among the peoples in the Middle East will only be possible with the end of this regime. Exactly. Everything depends on the end of this regime. Everything. There are things happening over there, folks. Reports of smoke rising toward the sky coming from Bahrain. Everyone is afraid of recording where it came from, where it fell. Nobody says absolutely anything, but there are explosions. There were explosions that happened there in Bahrain just a few minutes ago. My friends, if you missed the beginning of this live, you need to go back to the start of the live. If you only watch the live from the middle to the end, you won't be able to understand what's happening here. Go back to the beginning, watch from the start, set it to 1.5 speed. There's this option, you can change the speed and this live will go by much faster. If you do that, I promise you, this will go much easier and much faster too, okay? Let me just add something here because I need to ask you all for something. I have another channel mainly to talk about this one more time. I have a backup channel that I hardly ever use. That's the truth. I hardly ever use this channel, but I ask you to subscribe to it because we know how things work, right, guys? Today, this channel is here, but tomorrow it might not be working anymore. So you might end up without information about the Middle East because a lot of things can happen, guys. A lot of things can happen. This is my backup channel. Okay, the name of the channel is Davi Almeskani Cortez up here. This is the channel. It's a small channel. It's a really small channel, okay? But it's a secondary channel of mine. It's important to follow this channel because if we say something YouTube doesn't like, they could take it down. And we have this other option to keep in touch. I'll put the link to this channel below, pinned next to my name. Just click there and subscribe too. Hugs to all my friends in Israel. And see you at the next live stream. See you then.